Now let's finish up the project by applying some styles and some filters to our different layers. The first thing we're going to do is add some texture to a shape layer. I'm going to close out my Paths panel because I won't need it, and I'm going to open up my Styles panel. We can go to Window and choose Styles. Let's drag our layers out of the way. Now these are some predefined layer styles that you can automatically apply to any layer that we have. We can further refine how we see these by clicking on the little options, and let's choose small list. This will list all of them out. Actually, let's choose large list so I can actually read it. And if we want to add on more styles, you can click on the options again, and let's choose web styles down at the very bottom. This will ask you what you want to do. Do you want to append it to the existing one or just change it out altogether? We'll say OK, and this will add on just all of our web styles. Let's go to our Layers panel and select that rounded rectangle 1 layer. And then when we go to our styles, we'll choose the black anodized metal. With one click, you can see it applies that particular style to that particular layer. And if you look at our layer, we get a little FX icon, and you can see all of the different things that it's doing to that layer. This is a good time to save, so let's go to File and Save. Now if we want to apply a custom layer style, let's choose the left inset layer and apply a drop shadow. We can go to Layer, down to Layer Style, and choose Drop Shadow. This will open up our Layer Styles menu with the drop shadow selected. We've got Preview turned on, and I'm going to drag this down so we can both see our changes that we're making and also the layer that we're working on. We'll make sure that global light is checked on, and we're going to set the opacity at 50 and the others to 10 pixels, 5%, and then 10 pixels. Now this is going to add a very, very subtle drop shadow. To be honest, I think it's not even worth putting on here, but that's the way the book wants it. The next thing we can do is let's add another drop shadow that's a little bit more bold and dramatic. Click on the little plus sign, and this will create a second drop shadow. And with the second drop shadow selected, I'm going to move this out of the way. Click on the little color swatch next to the blending mode, and we're going to click on the blue and pick up the blue color that's on the front window of your car. We'll say OK. This time, we're going to uncheck the global light, and we're going to set this to be at negative 150 as far as our angle. We'll set the opacity of this one at 75, and this one will be a little bit larger at 20 pixels, 10%, and then 20 pixels. Now if we look at our drop shadow, you can see it's a much bolder and much more prominent. We can say OK to this, and you can see our layer style has been applied to our left inset. If we want to apply the same effect to the center and the right, hold down the Option button, or the Option key on your keyboard, click on the word Effects, and drag to the center inset. And when you let go of your mouse, it will copy those effects to the center. Let's do the same for the right. Hold down the Option key, click on the word Effects, and drag, and then release it on the right inset, and it will apply it to that one. So now we've got 3 drop shadows on our 3 insets. Let's apply a drop shadow to our car. Select your car layer. You can bring up your effects by double clicking on a layer. So this will bring up the layer effects. The thing about doing that is you need to make sure you've got the drop shadow selected. And in this case, we're going to set our field for the size to be at 50 pixels. We'll keep everything else the same. And you can change the distance and placement of this one by clicking on the image and dragging around, and you can actually see where this shadow is going to be. So let's drag it down and off until it becomes a little bit more prominent right there. When we say OK, that'll lock in that particular drop shadow, and this is a good saving point. Let's go to File and Save. Now let's use the filter gallery. I'm going to zoom back down to our insets, Command and the plus sign, And let's choose the third inset. This is the one on the far right-hand side. So I'm clicking on inset number 3 layer. Let's go up to filter and choose our filter gallery. This will pop up a new working window, and you can see there's a variety of different filters that we can click and choose from. The ones we want to use are under the artistic area. And we want to choose the plastic wrap. With plastic wrap selected, you can play around with the options for it, changing up the amount of detail and the smoothness, and you get an idea of what it looks like on the little preview area. Once you've got something that you like, you can say OK, and you can see that filter is now applied to this particular image. If we look in our layers panel, you can see this smart filter has been applied to inset number 3. Let's do the same thing for the inset 2 and 1. Hold down your option key and click on the smart filter, then drag it until it's on top of inset number 2, and when you let go of your mouse, you can see that filter is now applied to inset number 2. And let's open that one up, hold down the option key, click on the smart filter for inset 2, and drag it till it's on top of inset 1, and now it's applied to inset 1 as well. We can zoom out and see the results that we have. Again, this is a good stopping point, so let's go to File and Save and continue on. Now let's give our document a background. I'm going to hit Command 0 so we can see the whole thing. We'll go up to File and choose Open, and let's locate the tires JPEG. There it is there. We'll say Open. And remember, this will open it up in an entirely different document. With this done, let's go over to our background menu, our background layer, hold down Control and click on the background layer and choose Duplicate Layer. This will give you a dialog box and ask you where do you want to duplicate it to. In our case, we want to move it to the document we've been working on. So change your document to the magazine Photoshop document and say OK. And this will make a copy of the background layer into the magazine document that we have. You can now close out your tires JPEG. We won't need that anymore. And let's find the background layer in our layers panel, and let's click and drag it to the very bottom of our document. There we go, till it's underneath everything. We can then double click the name background, and let's call it tires. Hit return. Now for one of my favorite filters. Let's go back to our layers, hold down Option, and click on the tires eyeball icon so we can only see the tires. Let's go up to Filter and choose Liquify. With the tires layer selected, you get another working dialog box and you get a preview area. There are some tools off to the left-hand side and some options off to the right-hand side. In these options, make sure the pin edges is checked on. This will make sure that all of the edges won't be distorted. With the first tool selected, this is the warp tool, you can click and drag around and actually warp until you get kind of a neat little pattern. It doesn't have to be anything fine or fancy, but just do something to kind of warp around that particular image. Once you get something that you like, you can click OK at the very bottom, and this will liquefy that particular layer. Now let's go to the car layer. Going back to our layers menu, we'll scroll up till we can see the car layer, hold down Option, click on its eyeball icon, and select the car layer. We're going to use our eyedropper tool to create a custom gradient behind this layer. The eyedropper tool is located in your toolbox. If you don't see it, it's towards the top right here. It may be nesting underneath the ruler or some other ones. With the eyedropper tool selected, let's go up to the very top and look at some of the options. First off, change your sample size to be a 5x5 average. We do want to select all layers and make sure the sample ring is checked on. Next, let's move our cursor to the light silver portion of the car, right about here. With one click, you can see how it picks up that particular color and you can see it in the ring. So let's get the light silver right there. And when we select it, that's going to set it as our foreground color. Next, when we hold down the Option key, and we're going to click on the yellowish portion down here at the bottom of our headlight, this is going to set the background color to be that yellowish. So holding down Option sets both of those. Next, let's create a gradient with our custom colors. To select the Gradient tool, look in the center of your toolbox and choose Gradient Tool and go up to the options at the very top. We can open up the Gradient Picker panel and let's list all of these as a small list. This way we can see the name of each of these. We can click and drag to see all of these. Let's make sure foreground to background is selected. This will give us our foreground color and our background as the two color options. To further refine this, you can click on the gradient sample itself. This will pick up or open up your gradient editor. Inside of this editor, you can click on the bottom swatches and drag them to change the starting and stopping point. So let's set this right one to have a location of about 60%, right about there. To change up its color, you can double click on the swatch stopper. And let's give it a CMYK value over here at the side, a C value of 25. Hit Tab, M of 40, Y of 80, and a K of 0. When we say OK, you can see it changes it to this brownish color. Now let's change the leftmost stopper and bring it into a location of about 30%. And we'll set the little diamond that's in between it to have a location of about 70%. So it should look something like that. To add a new stopper, you can click below the gradient line and it'll add a new one. Let's put this one at a location of about 70, right there. A location of 80. Let's pull it over a bit right there. Notice that when I did that, it picked up on the last color that I had selected. And then finally, let's add a new stop down here at 0 and a new stop here at 100%. Now each one of these should be slightly different. We're going to set the color picker value of these to be solid white. So double click on this one down here, set it to be solid white. And to save our color values, we're going to click New. And you can see it's been added here. And then we can say OK, and that will add it to our color selections at the top. Now let's use our new gradient that we've created by adding it to its own layer. If you go to the Layers panel, scroll to the very bottom, and choose the Tires layer, then click on Create New Blank Layer. This will give us Layer 1, and we can double click that layer name, and let's call it Shading. Next, let's turn on visibility for all of the other layers. I'm just going to click on all of the icons or our eyeball icons to show them, but we've still got the shading layer selected. With our gradient tool still selected, let's click at the top left-hand corner and then drag down to the bottom right edge. And this will apply the new gradient that we selected or that we created. Now, if your gradient looks a little bit different from in the book, totally fine. As long as we can see the gradient that you've created, that's what we're looking for. Now, to adjust the blending mode and opacity of a layer, with the shading layer still selected, look at the top of your Layers menu. Click on the word Normal, and let's change the blending mode to be Overlay. When we do this, you can see how it changes the color of the background that we have. Next, let's select the Tires layer and drop its opacity. With Tires layer selected, look back at the top of your Layers panel and change the opacity of this down to 10%. And hit Return. Now you can see it's much more opaque in the background. Now let's save the file up and finish up this exercise. To finish up this project, we're going to place the text at the top of our design. In our Layers panel, let's scroll to the very top and choose the Car layer. Then we can go to File and Place Linked. Let's locate the Driver Mag Illustrator file, do Place, and in the next dialog box, make sure Crop to Bounding Box is selected, and we'll say OK. Next, we'll drag this till it's towards the very top, and we'll hit the little checkbox at the top to lock it in. Now we'll go to our Properties panel, which I see it over here. Let's give it an exact X and Y location. X location of 0.375 and a Y location of 0.375. When we hit return, that'll place it exactly where it needs to go. Now let's go to File and save it up one last time, now that we're finished. Now the last thing the book's going to have you do is to print a proof of your document. And I do want you to print this off and turn in the printed proof for your grade. In addition to this, you're also going to turn in the Photoshop file to Moodle. Now to print, you can go to File and Print. Right now, I don't have a printer set up for this computer, and depending on which Mac lab you're working in, it may be slightly different. But we just need to make sure that the printer settings are set up appropriately. First off, make sure you've got a letter size selected and that you're printing at 100%. If you scroll down, you can see all of the options. In our case, we'll collapse color management, and under size and position, make sure the scale is set to 100%. Once you're finished, you can hit print, and this will send it to the printer. If you need any help for this particular part, make sure to do this in class when Mr. Ivy is available.